All right, a new study out of University of Toronto says spending time with your kids is more important once they become teenagers, and suggests that 6 hours a week can help improve performance at school while also preventing delinquent behaviors such as drug and alcohol abuse. Gary Dierenfeld is with us now, social worker, yoursocialworker.com to find out more. And, of course, you can read his parenting column in the Hamilton Spectator. Gary, good afternoon. Great to see you again.
Good to be with you, Scott.
Anything new here? I mean, or is it that we've got to the point in life where we have to constantly be banged over the head with this because we're going to hell in a handbasket here?
You know, we work in a very a busy world. Dual income parents, working parents, and so the argument has been it's not how much time, it's the quality of time you spend with your kids that makes a difference. So this is interesting in that this article is saying, hey, it's not all about quality. There is something to be said for quantity too. And in particular, when we look at teenagers, when we reach this sort of magic threshold of some 6 hours of FaceTime, and I'm not talking Facebook FaceTime, I'm talking person-to-person, real life, with our teenagers, when we reach this threshold of 6 hours a week, interestingly, we see a lower risk of drug, alcohol use, delinquent behavior, improved school performance, just a better, more well-adjusted teenager.
Why?
Well, first of all, quantity does matter. If we're not in one another's company, we're not transmitting our morals and values. By having that face-to-face time, it provides us an opportunity to chat, explore, discuss that otherwise isn't there. It provides the teenager a sense of connectivity to the family. And that is important to feel connected. Otherwise, we're kind of like, it's a weird word to use, we're dismembered. We're floating out there, and we will be more subject to the influences of our peers and the Internet than we will be to our own parents.
Do kids feel parents are too busy to care?
You know what?
Or too busy to notice?
They
care, but they're not really noticing what's going on.
So I met with children at a Hamilton school last week or the week before, kids in grade 6, kids in grade 7, kids in grade 8, and in chatting with them about problems they face, where the problem is severe enough that it interferes with their concentration at school. So asking them, who do they turn to, who do they talk to? And, this is a straw poll, a show of hands. So asking these grade 6, grade 7, then grade 8 in 3 different groups, do you talk with any of your peers about any of the issues we identified? Maybe 15% would talk to their buddies. Maybe 2 to 3% would ever talk with their parents. And so one of the teachers very kindly debriefed with the students afterwards and sent me an email and asked, why aren't you talking with your parents? Because, some pretty weighty issues were identified. And the answers were kind of, I don't know if astounding is the right word, but they were interesting. I don't know that my parent has the time to listen, don't want to burden my own parents, don't know if they're going to get it. They're too busy. But you got the sense that they were worried about their parents and the burden of bringing their issues that it would have on their parents. So,
wow.
Yeah, isn't that astounding?
Yeah.
So I think it speaks to how harried we are as parents these days, that our kids notice it, and our kids try to protect us, the parent, from their own issues. But that's a problem, because it leaves those kids dismembered, disconnected, and they need us there as parents. And I think that's what this new research shows, that as we are there, seemingly the better adjusted our kids are.
We've talked about this before, and maybe we need to categorize parents, for lack of a better phrase. But in the old days, your parents weren't always running behind you and making sure you were this, that, the other, whatever. You just kind of, you were at the house. You were like chickens in the farm. You were one of the other animals.
Free-range parenting. There's a name.
Here we go. We come up with a free-range
parenting. The kids can roam.
There's a funny commercial on TV now where there's people on a farm and a chicken actually does leave. And you see it on a train and a boxcar, and he just keeps texting us. We don't know where he is. It's hilarious. But kids were there.
Yep.
We're all hanging around. You know, dad's there, mom's there, everybody's there. But there may not have been the conversations going on that go on now. There may not have been the interference that there is going on now. But you're always there.
Well,
whereas nowadays, it appears that we don't have any time, so when we do, it's got to be intense. It's got to be, we're doing this, we're doing that. It's like we're almost over-parenting.
Right. We got to cram 10 pounds into that 5-pound sack when we can. Mm-hmm. And even when we are there, are we really there? Like, if you're there and you're forever texting or checking your emails.
It's like the parent that buys the kids something all the time to make do for the fact they're never around.
Yeah, but here's something also interesting in terms of the good old days, right? And you know, I don't know if our listeners know this, but I have a lot of gray hair, so I'm when I say the good old days,
you sound young.
But you know, we used to spend time as a family. Mm-hmm. And some of the time we would spend it as a family would be daily, particularly over dinner.
Yeah, that's a big one.
And what's really interesting is the degree to which we spend time having dinner together as a family. Also, the lower the risk of bad outcomes for children. Mm-hmm. You can plot it on a graph. If you're together one evening a week, up to 7 evening a weeks, we'll have better adjusted kids. So, hey, Scott, I forgot what the darn question was that got me going.
Well, it's just, how do you balance over-parenting and under-parenting?
Right. So let's differentiate what we mean by that. When you use the phrase over-parenting, it's more like hovering and directing.
Yeah.
And what we're really looking for in quality parenting time is neither hovering nor directing nor protecting. We're talking about having the relationship. We're talking about checking in with our kids emotionally, psychologically. How are you? Mm-hmm. Truly, how was your day? And when the kid kind of sloughs it off fine, we say, no, really. Mm-hmm. How was your day? Yeah. I think you had X work and Y work at school. How did that go for you? When we show that kind of interest in our kids, then we're emotionally connected in a way that's meaningful to the child versus this helicopter controlling parenting.
I remember one of the Trudeau kids talking about growing up being kids of the Prime Minister. And, you know, because obviously if your dad's the Prime Minister, he's a pretty busy guy.
Yep.
But I remember one of the kids saying that, between 6 and 7 o'clock at night or 7 and 8 o'clock at night, whatever it was, they all sat down and had dinner and the door was closed and nobody could get in. Yeah.
Sacred time.
Yeah. And at that time, made them feel like $1 million. And then you go out the door and solve world issues.
You know, I remember when our son was 12-ish, he comes into my home office. Hey, Dad, will you watch this tape with me? And it was some basketball tape, and I blew him off.
Yeah.
I feel my wife's eyes on the back of my neck shortly thereafter. I turn around, and there she is with arms folded, and I'm oblivious, and I'm a social worker, and but I'm oblivious. I say, well, what's up? She says, you just blew off our son. He's downstairs, with his, chin on his fists. And so I went downstairs and I said, son, what was that you wanted to look at? I've turned off my computer. I got nothing else to do. Let's. And so he puts on this tape, and it was a 6-minute promo for a running shoe, but it shows some street kids playing pickup basketball. Well, we ran that forward, we reversed it, we went forward again to watch these shots. It took 10 minutes of my time. Yeah. My son was so energized for that undivided 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. And so we all need that reminder as parents. It's not just the quantity of time. That was 10 minutes. Yeah. And it made all the difference. And I think that difference lasted my son through the week, let alone through the day.
It's funny you should say that, because lots of times they'll come in and they'll have a question and you'll blow it off before even knowing what the question is or how long you're going to have to commit to this answer, or you just don't want to go there. And like you said, this is one of those things that can take 30 seconds or a minute of your time, and it completely sets a totally different tone.
And that is what we talk about when we think of quality time. Quality time has nothing to do with you assuaging your guilt by buying your kid off and taking them to fancy-dancy places.
Yeah.
It's about that emotional connection. So parents, those who are listening to this broadcast as we speak, Scott, when your kid comes home today from school or university or work, you've got an older child, say, can I take a minute of your time? First of all, they're going to wonder what kind of trouble they're in. And say, look.
Yeah, that's what my kids say. Am I in trouble?
Yeah.
Am I in trouble, Dad?
You're not in trouble.
Sit down.
But sit down and just look at your kid square between the eye and say, I don't ask you often enough, how are you? Is there anything you're grappling with these days? And if the kid blows you off, that's fine, but don't blow the kid off if it takes 3 seconds or 20 minutes. Go through the exercise, then look at how your kid manages with you. Here's the interesting part. The rest of the evening. See if there isn't a different level of connectedness and a lowering of stress in the house.
Yeah, good point. I'll also notice, too, that my kids will start using excuses to talk to me. If I'm busy. For example, they'll ask me something, and it's like, well, you know the answer to that, or you know where it is, or this doesn't really seem to make much sense. Why are you asking me? And it's like, no, they're looking for an excuse to engage with you.
There you go.
And again, you just got to take those couple of minutes and do it. Although I do usually argue with my daughter, why do you do this at 11 o'clock at night when I'm trying to get you to bed? I can talk to you around the dinner table. You don't say a word then, and now when it's time for go to sleep, you're yapping like, a chatty Cathy. Any advice for parents? And this is one of those situations where if you're doing this all along, it's easy.
Yep.
Because you started as kids, you have that kind of relationship, and you not breeze through, but it will make getting through the adolescent years a little bit easier. What happens if you don't have that sort of relationship? You're 10 years into your kids and you realize, you know what, I'm not doing it right.
How
do you correct it?
Fabulous question. And of course, that's almost everyone I see in counseling, right?
Yeah.
Because if you've got it down right,
you wouldn't be there.
You wouldn't be there.
But you're committed to make a change.
Correct. So what I explain to these folks, firstly, is I use an analogy. Do you ever play the piano? Nope, don't play the piano. So if I sat you in front of the piano, it would feel awkward. Yeah, it would feel awkward. But here's the thing. As you practice your piano lessons over time, it no longer feels awkward.
Yeah.
It becomes a part of you. And so this is independent of having faith, trust, conviction. You don't need to believe me. It's all a matter of practice. So if you take that 10 seconds that I'm saying today, sit down and just look at your kid squarely in the eyes and say, how are you? I was just thinking about you all day, and I thought I would just ask. If you do that a couple of times a week or a couple of times a month, that's the practice.
Yeah.
And watch what happens with your child. It's almost magical. So you don't have to have had the skills to develop the skills. You don't need to argue with me that, hey, that's not who you are. It's not your personality. We're not doing a personality-ectomy here. We're just learning a different skill set.
Yeah.
You practice it, you get accomplished at it.
What about when kids get to adolescence? It almost seems like it changes overnight. And by that I mean that I just find my daughter asking me things that she's never talked to me about. It's almost as if you're rejigging your relationship.
Well,
it's almost that she's gone from, being mama's little girl till all of a sudden it's different. It's just different.
And assuming you have a reasonable relationship with your children, there is something magical as the child somehow progresses between 11, 12, 13 years of age. Here's the context.
As the discussion elevates, and you start having discussions about more mature things, and you can see in their eyes, wow, I can't believe you're talking to me about this.
And so we move from what I call being their boss to being a consultant.
Yeah.
So when the children, the children are younger, we're highly directive. Do that, don't do that. Take your hands off the table. Go brush your teeth. Get yourself ready for bed. As they're teenagers, and assuming we have a good rapport and relationship, they're going to come up to us with questions, not to tell them what to do, but to discuss it.
Yeah.
And to have their blue sky discussions. What was this like? How would you? What was it like if?
Yeah.
And we have to recognize that now that they're teenagers, we're not the bosses. We are a consultant. And a consultant is someone who is there to give guidance and or advice which may not be used. Okay?
Yeah.
Very important. We're not the boss, we're the consultant. And so that is one of the psychological shifts moving from a preteen to a teen.
Yeah, good point. All right, Gary Dierenfeld has been with us, yoursocialworker.com to find out more. And, of course, you can read his parenting column in the Hamilton Spectator. A new study out of U of T says spending time with your kids is more important once they become teenagers and suggests that 6 hours a week can help improve performance at school. Gary Dierenfeld has been with us. Thank you, Gary,
Great
as
to be
always.
with you, Scott.
Take care. It is 1:54. It's 900 CHML. I'm Scott Thompson. Quick break. We're coming back.